What follows are my initial thoughts and reactions to this book of the Bible. I have not done any outside research regarding the more challenging or problematic passages of Christian scripture. Therefore, do not take whatever criticisms I may make in this video as my final word on the passage or verse in question. I am very likely going to be doing a Bible Revisited series addressing my different issues with the Bible, book by book, after conducting ample outside research. So now, without further ado, let's jump into the review. The book of Isaiah is a book in the Old Testament of the Bible, and it was written by the prophet Isaiah, and it is basically a book of a whole bunch of doom and gloom prophecies and a whole bunch of, yay, happy heavenly prophecies. And there's also some great, just kind of like, I don't know, just moral lessons you can take from the book. I like to compare Isaiah, at least in the way it's written, the way it feels, to the book of Revelation from the New Testament. Overall, I really liked Isaiah. It's a very weird book. It's not like, I mean, there are parts of it where it tells a little bit of a story, and then there are parts of it where it's just like epic monologue by God or Isaiah that is kind of hard to understand the relevance of. At least at times. It's an odd book, but it's really good. There are parts of it, like a lot of the prophecies in Isaiah, like I don't know if they all came true or if, you know, some of them did come true and others have yet to come true. I know some of them actually. I know a couple of them did actually happen, or it's believed that they actually happened. But a lot of that stuff didn't really affect me reading about it because I was like, okay, so this one country that Isaiah is talking about is doomed. Okay, I can't really get anything from this other than that, you know, people will be judged in the end, which I guess is an important thing to, you know, always keep in mind. But, you know, there were, and I've got a lot of passages marked in this book. You know, there were definitely, both in the first half of Isaiah and the second half of Isaiah, some passages and bits of writing that really did affect me and that I really did get something out of. And so it's not as if Isaiah is a book that's not applicable to your personal life, because it definitely is applicable, at least, you know, significant portions of it. And I gotta say, you know, the most fascinating thing about Isaiah is, to me, like, it was a remarkably Christian book. And I know that's kind of an odd thing to say because, you know, the Bible is the book that Christians believe in, so of course it's Christian. But I mean, you know, the division between Judaism and Christianity is often, well, Jews accept the Old Testament, Christians accept both the Old Testament and the New Testament. And there's always been this thing where, you know, people talk about how the Old Testament's different than the New Testament. And, you know, I haven't done enough research to see if, you know, they really are describing two different gods. It seems to me like, I mean, Jesus was talking about, whenever he talked about, you know, what is moral and what is right and the nature of God, he was referring to the Old Testament. So, at least in, you know, principle, the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament are the same. They just behave in very different ways, it seems like, particularly in the first, like, quarter of the Old Testament. The first quarter of the Old Testament is like, oh my gosh, God is like, whoa. There's quite a contrast between that God and, you know, Jesus and the Gospels. You know, it feels a bit disjointed. Maybe it's not. Again, you know, when you read a book like the Bible, you can't take your first impressions as, you know, the end-all be-all of the meaning of the book. You need to do some research because guess what? You're not smarter than all the millions of people that have studied this book before, who have come to, you know, different conclusions than you. You got to look at their conclusions and weigh them and see if they make sense. But when I say, like, Isaiah is a remarkably, like, Christian book, I mean, the amount of times that the Messiah is described in Isaiah and the amount of times that the Messiah sounds exactly like what is described in the New Testament, it's insane. Like, I don't, like, when you read Isaiah, you can't help but think of Jesus. And so the distinction between Judaism and Christianity, it's like, it really seems like Isaiah, which is a book accepted by Jews, is describing Jesus, and yet Jews do not accept Jesus. I mean, the amount of, like, Isaiah chapter 53, Isaiah chapter 11, like, there's so many passages that I'm not even going to read them, because there's just, there's not even a point in me reading them all, because you could just read the book and immediately come across them just from sitting down for 20 minutes. It's and so, like I said, like, it's a remarkably Christian book. Also, Isaiah is a very, like, inclusive book. There's so many passages. Again, this is very much like the Christian idea of salvation. The salvation, it's predicted, will be open to all, not just to Jews, but to Gentiles and everybody. Like, that kind of sentiment is expressed over and over again as well throughout Isaiah. And so, yeah, I mean, Isaiah really made me go, whoa, like, it seems to me like the New Testament, like, Jesus really was the guy. And so, yeah, Isaiah was really, it was a fascinating book, because you simultaneously had, like, the doom and gloom, fire and brimstone side of God, and then you had the hopeful, loving, all-inclusive side of God shown as well. And in a way, you can look at Isaiah as almost like a bridge between the Old Testament and the New Testament, as far as, that whole, difficulty with trying to, have the Old Testament God, be the same as the New Testament God. Isaiah kind of makes God more understandable in that way. And now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's please jump into the review and analysis of the different passages and verses in the book of Isaiah that I've found to be particularly fascinating, particularly challenging, and just absolutely worth discussing. Now, this first passage is Isaiah chapter 3, verses 11 through 26, and this is basically where Isaiah is describing, the anger and the oncoming wrath of God towards his people, but also towards, he addresses I guess you would say, the flaunting of material possessions by women. And it's pretty fascinating what Isaiah says the Lord says here. I'm just going to read it and we'll discuss. Woe to the wicked! Disaster is upon them. They will be paid back for what their hands have done. Youths oppress my people. Women rule over them. O my people, your guides lead you astray. They turn you from the path. The Lord takes his place in court. He rises to judge the people. The Lord enters into judgment against the elders and leaders of his people. It is you who have ruined my vineyard. The plunder from the poor is in your houses. What do you mean by crushing my people and grinding the faces of the poor? Declares the Lord Almighty. The Lord says, the women of Zion are haughty, walking along with outstretched necks, flirting with their eyes, tripping along with mincing steps, with ornaments jingling on their ankles. Therefore the Lord will bring sores on the heads of the women of Zion. The Lord will make their scalps bald. And that day the Lord will snatch away their finery, the bangles and headbands and crescent necklaces, the earrings and bracelets and veils, the headdresses and ankle chains and sashes, the perfume bottles and charms, the signet rings and nose rings, the fine robes and the capes and cloaks, the purses and mirrors and the linen garments and tiaras and shawls. Instead of fragrance there will be a stench, instead of a sash, a rope, instead of well-dressed hair, baldness, instead of fine clothing, sackcloth. Instead of beauty, branding. Your men will fall by the sword, your warriors in battle. The gates of Zion will lament and mourn. Destitute, she will sit on the ground. In that day 7 women will take hold of one man and say, we will eat our own food and provide our own clothes. Only let us be called by your name. Take away our disgrace. I think my Life Application Bible actually has some very good things to say about this passage. So I'm going to read the paragraph that's in my Bible, and we'll discuss that as well. And this is making reference to verses 14 and 15, which were, the Lord enters into judgment against the elders and leaders of his people. It is you who have ruined my vineyard. The plunder from the poor is in your houses. This is what is being made reference to. The women of Judah had placed their emphasis on clothing and jewelry rather than on God. They dressed to be noticed, to gain approval, and to be fashionable. yet they ignored the real purpose for their lives. Instead of being concerned about the oppression around them, they were self-serving and self-centered. People who abuse their possessions will end up with nothing. These verses are not an indictment against clothing and jewelry, but a judgment on those who use them lavishly while remaining blind to the needs of others. When God blesses you with money or position, don't flaunt it. Use what you have to help others, not impress them. I think that's a really good view of this passage. We have so much in this country, and I'm guilty of this myself. We have so much, and we seem to be most often preoccupied with trying to impress others with how much more we have than they, than by helping those others, by maybe giving some of what we have away. This next verse I would like to talk about is Isaiah chapter 5, verse 8. And this is kind of continuing the attitude God has towards hoarding wealth, hoarding possessions, hoarding, just being greedy and heartless towards your fellow neighbor and countrymen. This little verse, it's very short, very sweet, but it packs a powerful punch, and is very damning to people who, to all of us who take more than we need in life and refuse to give what we don't need away. Woe to you who add house to house and join field to field, till no space is left, and you live alone in the land. What I really like about this verse is it just illustrates, it's just like, hey, don't take more than you need. And I don't think, having like multiple houses is in and of itself bad, but I do think when you have, there's that old saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Having just ridiculous wealth and owning all these different houses and, just hoarding resources to yourself for the sake of, enjoying that stuff for yourself. That sort of, those actions in life, I think they even though they're not in and of themselves bad, can so easily corrupt your character. They can so easily make you heartless to the struggles of others and make you, look, if you own 5 houses, your ego's probably going to be inflated because you're like, I have 5 houses. And that sort of thing can really, I think it could just corrupt your soul. Jesus would definitely back this statement here in Isaiah. Don't take more than you need. If you have surplus goods, like if you have way more than you need in life, then maybe give that to someone else. Because if you hoard all the space to yourself, then you'll be all alone, and that's not good for you, and that's not good for all the people that could enjoy just a little bit of what you have. Now, the next passage I would like to discuss is Isaiah chapter 5, verses 21 through 24. And this passage is just like, it's just a cool passage where God is basically saying, just don't be bad. Woe to you who do evil. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. Woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine and champions at mixing drinks, who acquit the guilty for a bribe, but deny justice to the innocent. Therefore, as tongues of fire lick up straw, and as dry grass sinks down in the flames, so their roots will decay, and their flowers will blow away like dust. For they have rejected the law of the Lord Almighty, and have spurned the word of the Holy One of Israel. This passage is very much about justice, and, it starts off, what are those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight? A verse in Proverbs is one of the very first ones, is the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. If you don't fear God, if you think that you are God, you think that you are the master of your destiny, you think, you ought to be wise in your own eyes, woe to you, God says. And you're probably actually going to get in a lot of trouble if you really think that you're wiser than everyone else. Because one of these days, someone who sees that you think you're wiser than everyone else is going to point that out and make you look like a fool. And on that day, you will not be a happy camper. But verse 22 I also find interesting. Woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine and champions at mixing drinks. Obviously the Bible drinking is all throughout the Bible. And the Bible sometimes is like, don't drink. But most of the time it's like, don't be a drunkard. Don't drink to excess. Don't let it control you. And so it seems like, Jesus turned water into wine. It seems like, the Bible is okay with drinking. And here it's kind of expressing that same sentiment. It's woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine and champions at mixing drinks. If you being a guy who can just put down bottle after bottle of wine, if that's your thing in life and that's what you do in life, woe to you. That is not good. You're wasting your potential, and you're probably going to end up hurting someone in the end, because that much alcohol, nothing good will come of it. So I thought that was interesting. And then just the whole rest of the passage, it's just, about justice. Woe to those who acquit the guilty for a bribe, but deny justice to the innocent. And God's like, hey, you're not going to get away with doing that in the end. And I like that quite a bit. Now, this next passage is Isaiah chapter 6, verses 9 through 13. And this is a part of, the initial, basically visions Isaiah has. He's being called by God, and it's like this, this wild vision. And basically, he is told through this vision, go and tell this people, be ever hearing, but never understanding. Be ever seeing, but never perceiving. Make the heart of this people calloused. Make their ears dull and close their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. Then I said, for how long, O Lord? And he answered, until the cities lie ruined and without inhabitant, until the houses are left deserted, and the fields ruined and ravaged, until the Lord has sent everyone far away, and the land is utterly forsaken. And though a tenth remains in the land, it will again be laid waste. But as the terebinth and oak leave stumps when they are cut down, so the holy seed will be the stump in the land. So basically, this is Isaiah's commission. God is telling him, hey, go be the prophet that you were always meant to be. The only thing about this passage that is strange to me is the first, verse 9 and 10. Go and tell this people, be ever hearing, but never understanding. Be ever seeing, but never perceiving. Make the heart of this people calloused, make their ears dull, and close their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. It's almost as if God is saying, be deceptive with these people. At least in this translation, it seems that way. But when you read all of Isaiah, it seems like Isaiah is just simply telling the truth, and the people are getting very pissed off at Isaiah for it. And so he's not actually doing anything deceptive. He's just telling the truth. And, the further a society drifts from the truth, the more they will hate the person who preaches it. And that's kind of what ends up happening to Isaiah. He's first revered because he's great and everything, and then when he becomes critical, everybody's like, hey, we don't like you, and they plug their ears. But the only thing with this passage that's weird to me is it sounds like the Lord is saying, close their eyes, otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. Almost as if he's like, I don't want them to be. Again, in context, this passage doesn't make sense for this passage to mean that. Because again, Isaiah doesn't just walk around, preaching to the people lies. It's just very strange the way this part of Isaiah's commission is worded. I don't really know what to think of it. I just thought it was something interesting to talk about. If anybody has any ideas as to, why it's written the way it's written and how confusing it is, if you want to explain to me how it's not confusing, then please leave whatever comments you have in the comment section below. Now, this next passage is Isaiah chapter 25, verses 6 through 8. And this is one of the very hopeful, beautiful passages in Isaiah, where it's basically a prophecy about how, in the end, everyone will be able to enjoy the feast that the Messiah sets before them. And it's just a really beautiful passage, and I want to read it and I want to discuss it. On this mountain, the Lord will prepare a feast of rich food for all peoples, a banquet of aged wine, the best of meats and the finest of wines. On this mountain he will destroy the shroud that enfolds all peoples, the sheet that covers all nations. He will swallow up death forever. The sovereign Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces. He will remove the disgrace of his people from all the earth. I mean, this is very like this. It's just such a beautifully written passage, and again, it reminds me of the more hopeful and just beautiful parts of the Book of Revelation. It's just. I hope it's true. I hope it's true. Now, this next passage is Isaiah chapter 29, verses 13 through 16. And I read it because it just reminds me so much of the New Testament, of Jesus. And in a way, it kind of is somewhat of prophecy of Jesus. It's not explicitly stated, but it certainly seems that way. The Lord says, "These people come near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship of me is made up only of rules taught by men. Therefore, once more I will astound these people with wonder upon wonder. The wisdom of the wise will perish. The intelligence of the intelligent will vanish. Woe to those who go to great depths to hide their plans from the Lord, who do their work in darkness and think, 'Who sees us? Who will know?' You turn things upside down, as if the potter were thought to be like the clay. Shall what is formed say to him who formed it, 'He did not make me'? Can the pot say to the potter, 'He knows nothing'?" If you've read the New Testament, if you've read the Gospels, then you know why this passage reminds me of Jesus. It's particularly that part where it says, their worship of me is made up only of rules taught by men. Jesus was a bit of a rule breaker. His whole point was, gosh, you people don't understand why these rules were put in the Bible in the first place, referring to the Old Testament law. And Jesus famously was hated by the Pharisees, and he famously looked down on the Pharisees, and he was confrontational with them, because their worship was made up only of rules taught by men. They took the book of the law and made it human rather than holy. This passage, again, this is kind of like a passage where it's like you see that there is a sort of bridge between the Old Testament and the New Testament regarding the view of the law. At least when you look at this passage in particular, because it is very much like, hey, this is, this is not right the way you guys are pursuing me. You think you're living holy lives, but you're not. And that was kind of Jesus' whole point regarding the Pharisees and the very legalistic, rules-based religion that the Jews had, practiced in his time. There's just very similar language here where it's like, therefore, once more I will astound these people with wonder upon wonder. The wisdom of the wise will perish. The intelligence of the intelligent will vanish. And, all that stuff is very, I believe, like, maybe, I think there's a passage in the New Testament that is very similar in wording, certainly similar in sentiment to this passage. But man, it's fascinating. And there's also the second half of that, verses 15 and 16, it talks about, you think when you do bad things, nobody sees, but no, God sees. The all-seeing eye. No, God is not Sauron. This next passage I'd just like to read because I like it. It is Isaiah chapter 40, verses 27 through 31. Why do you say, O Jacob, and complain, O Israel? My way is hidden from the Lord. My cause is disregarded by my God. Do you not know, have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. That passage is just very lyrical, and it's got a lot of good stuff in it. Obviously, to an atheist, it means nothing, but to someone who does believe in God, it means everything. Now, I love this next passage. This is Isaiah chapter 50, verses 10 and 11. And this passage is very, it talks about, both gives hope and encouragement to believers, and it also gives a severe warning to those who are not. Who among you fears the Lord and obeys the word of his servant? Let him who walks in the dark, who has no light, trust in the name of the Lord and rely on his God. But now, all you who light fires and provide yourselves with flaming torches, go, walk in the light of your fires and of the torches you have set ablaze. This is what you shall receive from my hand. You will lie down in torment. You who are caught in the dark, you're in the throes of a horrible life situation. Things are falling apart. Trust in the Lord, even in the dark, and you will be okay. Let him who walks in the dark, who has no light, trust in the name of the Lord and rely on his God. Basically, if you do that, look, just remember, God has your back. God is in control. This is what believers should recognize, and there's hope and redemption in the end, no matter what. That's kind of the message there. And then verse 11, all you who light fires and provide yourselves with flaming torches, go walk in the light of your fires and of the torches you have set ablaze. This is what you will receive from my hand. You will lie down in torment. What that is all kind of saying is, oh, you think you don't need God? You think you don't need me? Fine. See how you do without me. Walk in the light of your own torches, and we'll see how far you get. But guess what? You're not going to get any sympathy from me if you, walk off a cliff. I'm not going to read this chapter, but Isaiah chapter 55 is just a beautiful chapter. Again, it's got that very inclusive, very Christian message in it. I guess it's, obviously a Jewish message too, considering that this was obviously Isaiah is obviously a part of Judaism, but it just, it's like the whole passage, the whole chapter is an invitation to the thirsty, those who are spiritually thirsty, those who are looking for God. It's a chapter that just reaffirms the idea that you have something to look forward to, even if it doesn't look like you do. This next passage has a similar message, and the passage is Isaiah chapter 57, verses 1 and 2. The righteous perish, and no one ponders it in his heart. Devout men are taken away, and no one understands that the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. Those who walk uprightly enter into peace. They find rest as they lie in death. In death, you will be victorious, is the idea. So that's why, people wonder why do Christians, why do they die for their faith? It's because they know, they believe that they will enter into peace, that they will find rest as they lie in death. And, I don't know, that passage, it's one of those passages that kind of sends chills down your spine. It's a very, it's a wild idea. And I think, I've wrestled with, my faith throughout reading the Bible, and will continue to wrestle with my faith as I go back when I finish the Old Testament. When I go back and analyze, do some research on all of my problems in the Old Testament and New Testament, I will continue to wrestle with the Bible. I will probably continue to wrestle with the Bible my entire life. But even so, like that passage, even though lots of times I have pretty severe doubts about Christianity, that passage, those who walk uprightly enter into peace. They find rest as they lie in death. That still rings true to me, in spite of the doubts that attack me just about every day. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for my review and analysis of the book of Isaiah. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have read the book of Isaiah and have thoughts on it and on my commentary, then please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below of this video. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you liked this video, please like it and subscribe. Tell your friends about the channel. And never forget to